Silence is a strange thing. People think it means weakness, or fear, or lack of confidence. But I've learned that silence is often the most powerful language we speak. Not because it hides who we are, but because it reveals what we're becoming. And if there's one thing I've realized in life, it's this: the people who talk the loudest rarely build anything worth listening to. The ones who create, transform, and evolve, they usually work in the shadows. I'm not saying this to sound wise or mystical. I'm saying it because I learned it the hard way. I used to explain everything I did. Every dream. Every plan. Every tiny step forward. I thought that if people understood me, they would support me. If they saw my intention, they would cheer for me. But most people don't want to understand you, they want to categorize you. They want to decide who you are before you've even figured that out yourself. And the more you talk, the easier you make it for them. I remember a time when I told a friend about a project I wanted to start. I was excited, full of energy, ready to build something meaningful. I didn't expect applause, I just wanted someone to believe in the possibility. Instead, I got a list of reasons why it wouldn't work. Why I wasn't ready. Why I should wait. Why it was smarter to keep things realistic. At first, I felt offended. Then I felt small. And after a while, I felt quiet. That moment taught me that not everyone deserves access to your ambition. Some people will look at your plans through the blurry lens of their own limits. They aren't doubting you, they're revealing themselves. There's a judgment people never say out loud, but they think it: if I can't do it, neither can you. And the older I get, the more I recognize this pattern. That's why I stopped explaining. Not out of anger. Not out of pride. Out of clarity. Because silence isn't a wall, it's a filter. Working quietly gave me space to think. To fail without embarrassment. To rebuild without witnesses. To improve because I wanted to, not because someone was watching. And honestly, I think everyone deserves that kind of privacy in their journey. The world romanticizes transparency, but growth requires solitude. You can't evolve if you keep auditioning for approval. Let me tell you another story. There was a guy I knew years ago, one of the loud ones. He constantly talked about what he would achieve, who he would become, what he would build. He announced every idea, every habit, every decision. Social media was his diary. But months passed, then years, and he stayed exactly where he was. Meanwhile, the quietest person in the room, someone nobody ever paid attention to, silently became the most successful of us all. No announcements. No speeches. Just work. And when his success finally appeared, it was so obvious, so undeniable, that people didn't even have questions. They just accepted it. Because results don't need explanations. They speak fluently. It made me realize something: when you talk too much about what you're going to do, your brain mistakes the talking for doing. Silence protects your focus. It forces you to prove things with effort, not imagination. Of course, silence isn't a cure-all. It won't do the work for you. Some people confuse being quiet with being passive. That's not the point. Silence only matters when it's paired with effort. Hard, uncomfortable, disciplined effort. The type of effort you don't post online because you're too busy actually doing it. The type of effort that feels monotonous but eventually compounds into something that looks like magic from the outside. Here's an opinion that might sound harsh: I think a lot of people fail not because they're untalented or unlucky, but because they want validation more than transformation. They want the applause before they've earned the stage. They want to be seen working, instead of actually working. And that mindset will drain your potential long before life ever does. There were times in my own journey when I felt stuck, embarrassed, invisible. I'd look around and see others moving faster, louder, brighter. And I questioned myself: should I speak more? Should I promote myself more? Should I try to prove that I'm worth something? But every time I forced myself into that performative version of life, I felt smaller. The truth is, some seasons of your life are meant to be quiet. Not secret, just sacred. You don't hide your growth, you protect it. Later, something interesting happened. The people who doubted me started asking how I did it. How I changed. How I improved. And I didn't have a dramatic story to tell. The answer was boring. I stopped talking and I worked. I stopped explaining and I acted. I stopped chasing validation and I built discipline. Success didn't happen overnight, it happened gradually, invisibly, consistently. And I think that's the real beauty of silent progress. It's slow enough to be real, but powerful enough to be undeniable. Here's a small life hack I picked up: if you ever feel tempted to announce your goals, wait 48 hours. In that silence, ask yourself, do I want to talk about the result, or do I want the result itself? You'll be surprised how often the desire disappears. Silence reveals what truly matters. Another lesson: never argue with someone who wants you to stay the same. Nothing you say will change their mind. They need your old version to feel comfortable with their own stagnation. You owe them nothing. The world may get uncomfortable when you grow, but that discomfort is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is becoming the person you know you're capable of being, even if nobody understands you on the way there. And sometimes, silence is the only environment where that transformation can happen. One more story. There was a rough period in my life when everything seemed to fall apart, financially, emotionally, personally. I withdrew. Not because I was ashamed, but because I needed space to rebuild. During that silent period, I learned things I never would have learned in noise. I learned patience. I learned self-awareness. I learned to operate without applause. And I learned that the only approval that truly shapes your future is the one you give yourself. When I eventually came back stronger, people called it a comeback. But it wasn't a comeback. It was simply the part of my life they didn't see. That's why I believe deeply, almost stubbornly, in the philosophy of silent work. Because silence doesn't hide your greatness, it prepares it. It cleans the noise. It sharpens your character. It separates the temporary from the meaningful. And when success finally shows up, it arrives with a force no speech could ever match. So yes, be silent. But don't be still. Work quietly. But work relentlessly. Grow privately. But grow deeply. Because one day, without warning, your success will speak. And when it does, its voice will be louder than anything you could have said. And those who doubted you will hear it clearly. Not because you explained yourself, but because you didn't have to.